Now, before the he said, she said of the president's S-hole comments lies the political realities. Both parties, they got a lot to potentially lose, let alone the country, if the deal on DACA and the Dreamers does not get done. Now, remember, there are two deadlines when it comes to DACA. Got the March deadline that we've been talking about that the president gave before the DACA policy is officially rescinded. But more pressing is the deadline of this Friday. That's when Congress has to pass a budget or the government will shut down. And both DACA, which Democrats want, and funding for a border wall, which the president wants, will likely have to be part of that compact, and the clock is ticking. The deadline piling pressure on both parties to either get a deal done or to blow up a possible deal to try and protect key policies. Now, for Republicans, the problem is obvious. Voters, they're going to hold them responsible for a government shutdown. It always happens, whichever party and president's in power, that's where the blame goes. Or, as Republican Senator Lindsey Graham told the Times, to believe that you can successfully blame Democrats for a shutdown over the DACA debate is naive. That's especially so in the midst of what looks like a wave election for Democrats coming. So much so that as of today, 30 Republican House members and 3 Republican senators have announced their retirements. But the pressure is not just on the right here. There are also election pressures on Democrats. In the Senate, 10 Democratic members, they're up for re-election this year, and they come from states won by Donald Trump. 5 of them from states won by Trump by nearly 20 points or even more. One of those, Missouri Democrat Claire McCaskill. Now, she summarized the problem facing Democrats like her. Quote, "We've got people running for president all trying to find their base, and then you've got people from Trump states that are trying to continue to legislate the way we always have by negotiation, and never the twain shall meet." Now, those senators need Democrats to turn out big this November, but on DACA, activists and interest groups, they're planning to hold their feet to the fire if the party doesn't unite to protect the Dreamers. Or, as Frank Sherry, the executive director of the immigrants' rights group America's Voice, put it, quote, "We're going to be telling Democrats the following. If you vote for a spending bill that does not include relief for Dreamers, you are voting for funds that will be used to deport Dreamers." But not everybody agrees. The pressure is squarely on Democrats. As former Long Island Congressman Steve Israel told the Times, Democrats absolutely have the upper hand as a matter of policy and also as a matter of politics. Republicans can't afford to shut the government down in one of the roughest midterm environments they've ever had. Dems, they've got the upper hand, and they, the Democrats, should play the upper hand. I know in absolute numbers, Andrew, they're right. In that Republicans have more to lose here historically. Republicans control the House, Senate, and the White House, so there's no debate. They control the purse strings. Government shuts down. Just ask Newt Gingrich who's going to get the blame here. However, some Democrats have to thread a needle. McCaskill, Trump carried Missouri by nearly 20 points, 19 points, last year. So can they split the baby, or do they, especially after what came out of that meeting on DACA, do they have to say there'll be zero capitulation or bending of the knee here? We say no to everything until they give in.
You know, usually in a spot like this, lawmakers will look at the worst possible scenario and try to figure out how to avoid that worst possible scenario. I think the worst possible scenario for Republicans is a government shutdown, yet they seem to be playing a little bit of chicken with it. For Democrats, I think they want to avoid a government shutdown as well, because they don't want to do anything that upsets the trend and the dynamic that they've got going for them right now. We saw the blue wave in November at the last set of elections, and it looks like it's continuing. So I would be concerned if I was a Democratic senator about anything that leads to a government shutdown, just because I don't want to change the status quo. Having said that, you really can't hard to vote for a budget that doesn't include protection for a DACA, and hard to vote for a budget that includes money for the wall. I mean, that's just such a big win for the president and such a strike for Democratic voters across the country. I think both parties are in bad positions here.
You know, I remember, Dom, when Obama was president and in his first term, he saw a wave election go the other way and take out a lot of Democrats. Now, whether it was for the camera or otherwise, and I've read accounts, he was racked with guilt over that. He said, these people stuck their necks out for me. They voted for the ACA, for Obamacare, and now they're looking for work. I think it's more complicated. Certainly, we've seen that many times through history. I don't think Trump cares how many Republicans get put out in their keys through November. I think he only cares about the news cycle, and if he can say and hear someone on Fox and Friends say in the morning that he got a win. I don't think he cares how many folks lose their job as a result of if the government shuts down or whatever else. I think that's complicating this process. There's no traditional political pressure that he's feeling.
He has to care. And the reason why the president has to care is his survival may very well depend on what happens to Republicans in this year's midterms.
But sorry to interrupt. I hear you, and you make 100% sense. But couldn't you make the argument in Trump's head? Right now, if anything goes wrong, I get the blame because I've got the House and the Senate. But if the Democrats have one or two of those chambers and something goes wrong, I can blame somebody from now on. I can blame the Democrats. I try to now. No one's buying it. But I'd love to blame somebody other than myself.
Under normal political situation, you make a lot of sense. But here's why I disagree with the premise. If the Democrats take either house, this president is looking at impeachment. So as long as his boys, look at what they did on making up stories about what really happened in that DACA meeting. I don't blame them because for their political survival, they had to lie for the president. I know you disagree,
agree to disagree,
but they had no political choice. They go against them, they were done politically. So now, if the Democrats take either house, what do you think those Democrats are going to do? They're going to go to start impeachment hearings based on the behavior that the president's doing. The only thing I disagree with Andrew, the Democrats are in a lovely position. Don't cave. Whatever you do, don't give in on that wall, because if you give in 1 inch on that wall, the president can then say, my methods may be unorthodox, but I told you I would deliver that wall. And that would be a disaster for Democrats.
What do you think Republicans are most worried about in the next week and thereafter?
I think in the next week, they're concerned about the fact that, to me, this is a president that does not have a plan. We can sit here and talk about strategy or what should be going through his mind. I think this is the least politically strategic president that we've had, certainly in my lifetime. And again, you don't have to necessarily love or hate Donald Trump, but I think the reality remains, what has been seen when you saw that meeting that we talked about last week, where first he was for a clean bill, then he wasn't for a clean bill.
There's no method to the madness.
There's no method for the madness. He's willing to go with whatever is going to get him through the day, and sometimes he doesn't necessarily see the larger picture. That even manifests itself locally when you have people like Rob Astorino who no longer has a job, right? The fact that you have Republican canvassers out here trying to get signatures, they can't get signatures. This is all stemming from the fact that we have a president that is so historically unpopular and also doesn't seem to recognize the fact that he is causing not only the nation, but his own party real political difficulty and real political turmoil.
You got to be happy you're not running for election right now, right?
Yep.
It's tough being a Republican now.
You're walking into a sawmill as a Republican. But, I don't think the Democrats are off easy either. Going back to the last shutdown of government, Republicans also got in trouble. Remember all the filibuster, and Republicans were blamed heavily for the shutdown as a result of that. I don't think there's no winner here if this thing occurs on Friday and we don't have a deal.
The public blames somebody more than someone else. It's not a box on both their houses.
Republicans controlled Congress during the last shutdown.
But Republicans were primarily reacting to the Affordable Care Act, among other things. I think the Democrats, and based on earlier things, this is their moment. They can get DACA and they can claim a major victory, and they thought they had it when the president said, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. So I think they're going to hold tight regardless of the politics, and I agree with Joe. The president doesn't think this stuff through. He thinks daily, as you indicated earlier. And here, your situation is Republicans will be put certainly on the line, but so will Democrats. They're not going to get away scot-free.
And I think it's interesting. We talked before about Kelly. This is where a Priebus could have helped. If you had somebody, just somebody who knew the lawmakers on the Hill well enough to say, what do you guys want? What do we got to do here? I need you to go along with this and do the following.
You'd think Mike Pence would be able to fill that role.
No, I don't. Well, Mike Pence doesn't really have those relationships. But I would say just quickly here that I think the outrage goes to the issue, the blame goes to the people that control the votes. I think that initially we'll have Democrats in alerts here if the government gets shut down in the name of 800,000 DACA recipients. But if this thing starts to drag on, ultimately it's within the Republicans' power to end it. And I think if it goes too long, then we will rue the day that we ever decided to shut down the government in the name of politics.
Amen to that. All right, coming up next, closer to home, a changing of the guard in New Jersey. Phil Murphy in, Chris Christie out. We're going to take a look at what the new governor's facing here and what Christie said on his way out the door.